Good morning. Actually, it's really early here in Florida. It's actually January 27th, 2026. But I'm going to share today, yesterday, and that is the January 26th. My readings from yesterday because I'm yet to do my readings from today. Um, I just got back in from Puerto Rico yesterday morning, and and it was a mission of God. I think it's a mission from God, of God, for God. That trip, as I shared in my video on the 25th or 24th, actually, from Puerto Rico. It was kind of determined, um, very last minute to go, and on that Saturday, I ended up going to a place that I've been around probably hundreds of times, but I've never gone in, which is it is the neighbors of the government's or the governor's home, which are nuns. It's a location where they kind of it's a hospital and a convent in a way. Um, there's probably around, I don't know, 12 or 18 nuns that live there, and they take care of about 12 or 18 patients. People coming recovering, so recovering from some injury or something. That's where they go, and that convent has like the most beautiful view of the Bay of San Juan. You could see every cruise ship coming in, leaving out. But I ended up going there Saturday, and they had a beautiful display of the history of Jesus, miniature history. You had everything from his birth all the way through the Day of the Innocents when Herod killed the kids, to the situation of how he was sent to Egypt, to different the Jordan River. I mean, it was very pretty, and well done. A lot of details. And in there was a statue of Christ, called Sacred Heart, and it was in Him we trust, right? In Him we trust, and it was one of those, um, just Him standing up gloriously. So I got to talk to the nuns and learn a little bit about them. And there was this Dominican nun from a place where Juan Pablo is from, Cibao, in Dominican Republic, and I got to talk to her, and that was very nice. But you know, it was one of those experiences where I got to see something with a different pair of eyes, and I feel like that's very critical, right? As I subsequently, and I got a little piece of like a bracelet from there that that I gave Sorailis on her birthday. She wore right away, and then the interesting thing is, as you guys probably maybe recall, as I went to the quinceañera event, um, I went there and with a lot of kind of thoughts about how it's going to be, what kind of reaction am I going to get. And God was preparing me through the day. I ended up going through like the three different churches, did my readings. I was feeling good. Faith um, was built up for that, and as I went there, I got to see my aunt first. It was a little. She was in the coordination mode of this event because that's what she's known for to do, and she did very well. Then I got to see my cousin, who I haven't seen in several years, and first, and then I got to see my other cousin, which I haven't seen as well since several years, and it was emotional as well. Um, and I got to see some people that I have not seen in that neighborhood in many years. But as I went in and waited for the entry process and the surprise to my goddaughter, you know, I was thinking, what am I going to do? How am I going to talk to her and all these things? But one of the things that I figured out was that I know that God will do it. I knew that God would do it, and He did. And I ended up seeing how what I said to her stayed in her head, because the next day people were leaving on planes and things like that, and a lot of stuff happened where I was also supposed to leave, but I got a better situation by staying, and just little miracles after miracles happening, and that enabled they also stayed and they wanted to spend time with me, so we were able to spend time together in Old San Juan, but with the seeds that were planted on Saturday evening, and you could see them being watered on Sunday. And so I went there to touch them. I went there to share. I went there to see glory happen. I went there, when I was on Sunday reading, a gentleman came up to me as I was reading, and I said something from that reading, which was, you know, evil. You cannot answer evil with evil as you become evil, right? If you do. And he approached me and he said that day, and I talked to him for a little while. That day he prayed that somebody would come up to him to give him support spiritually, which, you know, I was his little miracle in his life. So we become each other's miracles, um, as we go in this journey together. So, you know, I'm very blessed. I went on this mission and I felt his presence. Even to my friend Jose, which I met after the event, he also needs Jesus, and he was outside talking with me, crying with me about this journey. So that he wants to go on, and how he's done a lot, accomplished a lot, but he feels so bad inside. And, you know, I was there to tell him, I know, and he loves you, and he's waiting. And my cousin Abner the same, my cousin Sami, my cousin Genesis, and even my aunt, and I know that that's what we do with Pathfinders. It's plant those seeds, and I hope that one day some of them will do a video and share their journey and their path. So, they joined me that day as they were there with me to showcase that they heard the word. Now it's about seeing that word mature in them. So I'm excited about that. Um, but yet, yes, as I came into back on to Florida, the world, of course, starts to hit, weather conditions, problems with work, you know, different perspectives happening, legal matters appear, insurance matters appear. So the world right away starts to hit. And, you know, there are the consequences we have to deal with. And then we have to understand that, we cannot let that detract us from our mission. So, ended up as driving up, found a lighthouse close to Pompano Beach, and sat there and took a picture of the lighthouse as my readings in the backdrop. And I'm going to share a little bit about the readings and what is the meaning of that lighthouse. Why God took me to that spot. And And it was tough day yesterday, tough day. I was like exhausted from the trip, and you know, walking and talking, and just late evenings. But that's the journey, right? The cool thing about those nuns, I forgot to tell you. So, you know, I ended up taking my family, my aunt, my cousins, to that spot, and they got to meet the nuns, and the nuns got to meet them, and they got to see the display. The kids got to see the display, and I don't know. I thought it was beautiful, and I got the nun's phone number. None of those hot chicks' phone number. I got one of the wives of God's phone numbers, and I said, hey, I gave my phone number. If there's something I can do to help, love to kind of join and just share. So that was pretty cool that happened. Mm. So the readings, and I have them noted. The first reading in the God's Little Book of Calm, change your attitude was the mindset, and it was our greatest discovery is that we can alter our lives by altering our attitudes. It is your thought life, not your circumstances, that determines your happiness, right? So as I think about that with God, right, it's like we can just keep our attitudes of the world, of reacting, of challenging, of pushing, or we can take God's attitude of loving, forgiving, giving him praise, recognizing that everything is done through him. You know, it's just a different way of looking at life. So I thought that was fitting, because sometimes, you know, get disappointed in what's happening and how we react. But we can change that. We can change that. As I went to the next reading, which is Stand Strong, it's God's compass. And this is how the lighthouse comes in. Because, you know, it highlights how, this group of people um, got targeted in the war, they were in a boat, got targeted in the war, and they had to jump into these lifeboats. And the lifeboats had a compass. And the compass gave them a location where they could go in the travel lanes, because they were way offshore. So as they got there, people got to rescue them 3 days later, right? And God's light, it's what you come back to, right? So sometimes we get lost out there, and we see God's light out there. His lighthouse is shining. All we have to do is just jump into it. And that's where I was at that lighthouse, you know. So it was interesting that message was how sometimes we can feel lost, but if we have the compass of God inside of us, we'll get to the right place. We'll get to the right lighthouse. And we just got to keep that developing the faith, you know, because I could tell you that through some of these challenges that happens to us. We just feel like we just got targeted, and maybe we're afraid, and we cannot be afraid. We're going to be okay. He has us. As I went to Poems and Prayers with Matthew McConaughey, you know, he comes up with a pretty cool statement. Choices and judgments are not inherent oppressions. Unjust and cruel treatments are. Consider the spirit and word and intention will confess, right? So, sometimes we are judged by others, and sometimes we're judged by others just because, they don't really want us. They want the truth. They want us to be there, but they don't know. So we just got to make sure we understand the intent. And it's not good to have it. The only judge is Jesus, but sometimes we just got to kind of change the perspective. And God is not calling me to rigid judgment, but to understanding mercy and truth in his love, right? By my reaction. So, you know, that's what I got to look at. And as I went to Everyday Gospel, um, it was Exodus 25:8. I will dwell in the midst of my people. They did the tabernacle, and they did this creation, Moses, that God told him to do, to create like a house of worship, a tent of worship with a tabernacle that could be moved. And the tabernacle shows his holiness and mercy. So it's the same thing, the tabernacle, as we can recognize just where grace and truth met Jesus on the cross. That's his tabernacle, right? That cross. That's now in our hearts, right? That forgiveness. And God dwells inside of us because of that. And we got to recognize that. God's inside. As moved on to Be Thou Prepared, we were talking in there about this priest in Japan where there's 1% of the people are Christians. When the earthquake happened, he had a dream, and the dream kind of told him, hey, are you going to leave? And he remembers when Jesus was asking, people, are you going to leave me? Are you going to abandon me? The question wasn't to go leave. The point was to not abandon him or his people. So he stayed, and because of his belief and his love and his preparedness with his church, he was able to support the people in that area faster than the government. So sometimes we get ready with our faith, with our process, and it is the quickest response that God gives to people is through our willingness to love and help them. And that's what happens when natural disasters happen. You see all these people kind of come together because they're ready. They're ready. So imagine when we get ready for that judgment and to be there with Jesus, to support him, to enable him, right? So preparedness is not fear, it is readiness to serve. As I went to the Bible after that, I read, John, first book of John 4, right? And that's where it all comes back to love, right? Is that God is love. Those who love know God. Those who don't love don't know God, right? And his faith is proven by love, by ability to love. And that's, in my trip to Puerto Rico, that's what I was saying to everyone, that I love them and I love Jesus. Because that's what Jesus is, love. So, the readings that I had yesterday reminded me that God is shaping my heart. That's what he's doing through these readings. And he shapes the heart. He guides you in the path, right? It gives you that lighthouse, that compass. And sometimes through like natural disasters and all these things that happen, events that happen, such as maybe quinceañeras, things like that, he softens the soil so then we can go in at the right time and execute his glory. And then he makes us act. So as I went to Puerto Rico, I acted. I was sharing about my change with people and becoming vulnerable to them, so then they can understand me. So we are preparing our faith step by step in his love, and he then prepares us and puts step by step elements in our path so we can execute His love. I am very grateful to God for giving me the opportunity to go out there. I'm very grateful to be back and take on these challenges that are happening with His faith and with His love, and just keeping the strength to move only when He tells me to move. So thank you, God, for that. Thank you, God, for my family. I'm looking forward to seeing my son later in the week. Um, Thank you for my sons, my grandkids. Thank you, God, for those people that love me, that are there. Maybe think a little bit, I'm a little bit challenging, crazy with how, I even get phone numbers from nuns. Those are people that we, got to kind of learn from and support. I felt like, how interesting it is that they are in this world, and they can do more because they're so committed to God. I am thankful to those people that are supporting my journey. Yesterday was interesting. As I landed in Florida, John was right away reaching out, wanting to share some thoughts with me, and I look forward to seeing him later today. And it's great. I now see that, that continues to grow. My Aunt Marisol will hopefully be one of those supporters. I believe so. My mom is. My dad calls me yesterday and said, hey, we need to catch up. And so thank you, God. Thank you, God, for all those. And, thank for the people at work that continue to be focused. Hugo, Brenly, on that, on those readings, on sharing what they're learning, seeing the little miracles of God in the path, that keeps the faith up and encourages the people at work. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for, those seeds that we planted that I know they're growing. I know they're going to continue to grow. The new seeds that we just planted, the seeds that are planted that are being watered by you. And God, thank you for those seeds that we still are looking in the Pathfinder group, and they're going to keep coming. Thank you for letting us continue to do this. Thank you, Debbie. And I can't wait to start seeing, more Pathfinders in the way. And I know that's going to happen. And I can't wait to read today and see what God has in store, which I'll do next. Love Jesus. Very happy and very thankful and grateful. Thank you for the lighthouse. Have a good day.